Hello there, this is Denzin, and today I'm looking at this, Eagles of Empire. So this is an historical wargaming video, looking at the Franco-Prussian War from the early 1870s. What drew me to this particular time period? When it comes to historical wargaming, I do like the 19th and 18th century, they're my favourites. And you may have seen my Rorke's Drift video, and being a British chap, I do tend to lean towards British engagements, so usually colonial in the 19th century or American War of Independence for the 18th century. But I was interested in the Franco-Prussian War because if you're going to do a 19th century war which involves two industrial powers, I think a lot of people do the American Civil War, and that gets done a lot. I've never been that keen on the American Civil War. I don't know why. But the Franco-Prussian War sort of grabbed my attention. I think mainly it might be because I do World War One as well, and that German look from the Prussians with the spiky helmets probably attracted me. And I also do a bit of Napoleonic, so that's sort of the French look as well, which hadn't really changed too much, to be fair. In fact, the Franco-Prussian War, when you look at what they had, isn't too different to what they started with at the beginning of the First World War when it comes to uniform designs, which is quite interesting, especially the French with their red trousers and their blue, and of course the Germans with their spiky helmets. It just piqued my interest. I got into it. I started watching YouTube videos on the war because I didn't really know much about it really. And it sort of set the scene for what came later, such as World War One, of course, with the unification of Germany, and the end of Imperial France, the end of Napoleon III, and the beginning of a new republic. And I found it quite interesting and very different. So that's what got me into it. I originally got Perry Miniatures plastic box sets, which is what you can see here in front of us, to do this game using rules from some of the Osprey rule books that you can get out there. But then I spotted Eagles of Empire, and I thought, oh, here's a game system designed for this particular war. So I picked it up, and it's a very sort of artisan game, I think is the best way of putting it. It's very very bespoke. It's a bit of that's an odd thing to say about a war game, but it's got a very artisan feel to it when you buy the rules, and they do their own range of minis as well, which are metal. I've got a couple of them, not many, and I do want to support them a bit more, so hence this video, and also getting some of the miniatures myself at some point. But I started off with the plastics from Perry because I already had them, and you don't need a lot of them for this rule system, which is great. So one box of Perry French, for example, or Prussians, and you get a couple of whole units and commands from just those one boxes. They really get you going straight away, which is great. And then you can just add metal miniatures such as cavalry later on, can't you see? Now you'll notice the basing is very unusual for this game, and that's put me off slightly at first because I was so used to rank and file sort of 19th century, 18th century basing, square bases or block bases, lots of people on one base. But these had round bases, and they're sort of done in little squads of 7 miniatures for a unit. So if I go in here for the French, you can see we've got a 3-man stand and a couple of 2-man stands. So every unit has basically 3 wounds. So when you lose a wound, you just remove one of the stands. So it's got a bit of a skirmishy look to it because of that. But when I started basing them, I actually rather enjoyed it. I thought, oh, this is unusual for me. I'm not used to multi-basing on round bases like this. And because every unit has basically 3 wounds, infantry usually have 7 men on those 3 stands. You don't really have to stick to that, to be fair, do you? If you've got 3 wounds and every time you lose a wound, you lose a stand, you could do whatever you want on those stands, couldn't you? It's the same for the cavalry, if you look over here. So we go from 3 to 2 to 1, as in wounds. So you can remove them down till you have 1 left. So it allows you, in a way, to do little dioramas. You could just have one guy on there clambering over his dead mates or something, or use some wound counters on there, or whatever you want. So I've gone pretty standard and just put the 7 men on the stands, but you could go crazy with that, really. So I might think about that in the future if I get some more figures. Just to go across the board here so you can see what I've got. Usually you get units of, as I say, 7 figures on 3 stands, but you can combine 2 units together and give them a command, and that means they can move together as a squadron, if you like. I think, well, squadron is the word they use for the cavalry, but they can move together as a unit thanks to the commander. And you have doctrines, special abilities that you can do if you have a command unit. You can put them on their own, just have a squad of 7, but it does mean they can't do certain abilities. And you can, during the game, if you spend points, you have command points you can spend, you can actually give somebody a field commission, and they basically, you take away a stand and you get a command stand to take over the unit, and that allows you to do, as I say, some special abilities. And the special abilities are what kind of makes this game. But yeah, what have I got here? So there's some Zouaves, a couple of units there. I think I painted these up as Algerians, these ones here. These are from the Perry's Civil War, American Civil War sets, which I know aren't technically the right time period, but the uniforms didn't really change. I guess it's only the weapons that would be different, but if you're going to be that historically anal, you can have a go at me, but I thought it does the job. The bog standard French Imperial Infantry there. I painted up most of them in standard colours, apart from a unit around a corner here. If I have a look, I did these up as Marines, so it's all blue. That's what those fellas have. A couple of artillery pieces. One is a machine gun, which was the sort of French secret weapon, but they didn't really know how to field it. They sort of put it with the artillery away from where it should be, which is a bit closer up, and so it didn't really fulfill its potential, which is a bit of a shame for the French. You know, they should have really pioneered that a bit more, put it to good use. The French also had superior rifles, the chassepot, which had a longer range, and in the Eagles of Empire rules, that really does make a difference. When I played this, the Prussians really had a hard time getting close. You've got to get in close to the Prussians. So if you use your French well, you can pick the Prussians off at a distance before they get too close and cause havoc. It's, again, the French didn't really utilise that very well, did they? I don't know if there was a problem with their command structure, the tactics at the time, modern technology, not knowing how to use it properly, and so certain things were wasted. Because, as we all know, the French lost the war, and Paris was besieged by the Prussians and Bavarians and other German states at the time. So when it comes to the... let's not forget the cavalry, there we go. The Africa Corps, I think they're from, again, the sort of Algerian colonies. I use those as dragoons, rules-wise. And when it comes to the Prussians, I have a couple of box sets of Prussians that I got from the Perrys. Again, units of 7. And you get lots of head options for doing sort of more militia-type units, for example. So just to break it up a bit, I have some metal Jaegers there, some skirmishers, using the woods there, huntsmen. There we have some dragoons charging in there, some Prussian dragoons, and their artillery. What's he doing in the stream? Who put him there? Some artillery units there. The Prussians have a special rule for their Krupp guns. If you have 2, you basically have an artillery park, and you can do a lot more damage. You're combining the firepower of the artillery. So instead of rolling 1 dice for your attacks, you can roll 3 dice if you have 2 together. The rules are strangely simple, yet difficult. A lot of nuances to it. So, for example, with these cannons, if they want to shoot an enemy unit, you roll 1 dice. If you get a 6, you've hit them, and there's no saving throw from artillery. That's quite difficult. So you either do nothing with them, or they do really well. So that teaming them up and getting 3 dice to roll to really maximise your chances is very important. So you can do a bit more damage, but yeah, no saving throw. Same for the machine gun, although they hit on a 5 or 6. But again, very temperamental. When it comes to the units, you basically, your unit strength determines how many dice you roll. So if you have 3 squads, 3 men, making seven men making 3 stands. You roll the maximum amount of dice, and you have to get 4s. If you've only got 2 stands left, you have to roll 5s, and if you have 1 stand left, you have to roll 6s to hit. And then your target rolls defense, and they have a similar problem. They have to roll a certain amount of dice, depending on their card. So here's the Prussian card, Prussian infantry. So they roll 3d6 and 5 power, but if they've only got 1 unit left, they have to get 6s. And same for defense, 2d6 for defense, but they've got to get, again, how many units have you got left? If you've got a full 3, you just need 4 more. So quite simple. Unit strength 3, as I say, take the stands away. Charge value, so running in to do the damage. The range of the needle gun, and their movement value of 6 inches. And then at the bottom you have a couple of special abilities. These symbols mean they can enter buildings and woods, which not other units can, such as cavalry, artillery, and so on. So really simple. It's all on a little card. Gives you those rules. There they are. But what makes the game really interesting is you have command points which you can spend. So if we look at the table here, in a normal mission you might have objectives around the board. Last time we played it, we used the casualty markers as those objectives. If you get within 6, you claim that objective and you gain resources. You gain command points to spend for the next turn. So at the beginning of every turn, you look at your hand of command points. How many do you have? How many have you earned by capturing locations? And then you can spend those command points on either bringing on some reinforcements. So this costs 4 to have the artillery. Let's bring on a new cannon. And they come on. So it's as if you're part of a bigger battle that's off the table. So you can constantly resupply your men. Your men are getting killed quite easily in this game. They can be wiped out on some good rolls quite quickly. So you can replenish them, bring them more in. And you can also spend the command points on special abilities, which should be called doctrines. So every nationality has its own card. So we have Prussian tactics here. So choose a unit in command. This unit doubles its movement. So if you have a command unit, as I say, if you have them, you get extra bonuses thanks to these cards. So that Prussian unit could move double and get in close, which helps them bridge the gap for that longer range of the French rifle, you see. We've also got +1 to attacks and hand-to-hand combat, so getting in there. And then artillery barrage. So even if you don't have any artillery on the board, you can still fire off 6 dice worth of artillery. So 6 dice rolls, get those 6s, no saves. You could potentially just go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, wipe out the whole unit there. Gone, if you got that many 6s. But you also need to spend ammunition. So that's something else you have to claim. There'll be a supply depot on the board. You move to it, like the command points, you claim it if you hold that position. And that allows you to perform special abilities. So we have Prussian doctrines, we have French. We've also got the Bavarians here for the different German states. And it adds a bit of national flair to each of the forces. And that's what makes the game interesting, because you have these special abilities that you can play, which kind of reminds me more of a sci-fi or fantasy game rather than a historical game. So you can play these abilities if you have the command points. And once you start losing positions on the board, you lose those command points. You don't have the resources next turn. So you can find your forces getting depleted and the enemy getting stronger and stronger, and it gets more difficult for you to actually win the game. So it's a very challenging game for such as what I would consider a simple rule system. It's got lots of nuances to it which keep it really interesting. So when we played it for the first time, we did the practice game, and then we did it again, and then we played a couple of other missions, thinking we'd only play about 2 games. I think we played about 5 or 6 by the end of the day, and it had a lot of replayability. Every scenario, we just played it again, going, "Well, that was feeble for the French. Let's try this again." And again, or the Prussians. It was feeble actually for the Prussians. So mastering the system is very, very difficult when you first start playing. If you want to get into this game and you buy from Eagles of Empire the rules, bear in mind the rules, the drill book here, as it says, infantry drill book. That has all the rules for infantry. That's it. There's no rules for artillery and there's no rules for cavalry. Now, which is a bit of a barrier, so you need to buy both books at the same time. So the cavalry, artillery, and heroes. So you can get cards for special characters as well. Again, adds that sort of sci-fi fantasy wargaming element to it, doesn't it? When you have special characters based on real people, historical characters. So do buy both books if you're going to get them. I would also recommend the campaign book here, The Army of the Loire, which deals with the second phase of the war, which was when the Empire of France fell and it became a republic. And they were sort of clinging on for dear life, declaring war again on the Prussians. This has a number of scenarios going through historical encounters, and every scenario has special rules and forces that you should take, which really add to the game. Every game is different. And there's some of the official miniatures that you can get. Well worth getting. I did find it weird that they went to a campaign book 2, and I thought, well, where's campaign book 1? They haven't done it. So they've started sort of halfway through the war rather than the beginning of the war with Imperial France, which sort of threw me slightly. I thought, oh well. So hopefully that will come out. I hope they do. I think they're concentrating on doing a World War One version of these rules, which I can understand would work quite well. But yeah, it'd be good if they finish what they started. And again, adding that artisan sort of feel to the game. Everything came in brown paper. And here we have cards for each one of the scenarios in the book with a little map of how to set up your board. So where the command points are, the objectives. So this one gives you ammo if you go there. And the 4 command points for this location, and so on. So every scenario has a bit of blurb, has a card. And I like the fact that it starts in autumn here, and you can see as we go on through the missions, the table gets a little bit more autumnal, and then eventually into the winter, and into the frozenness of the winter campaign. So really nice, really lovely little cards, and you could work your way through the whole second phase of the war. Not a big figure count, so you can get into this game really quickly. It is a bit of a barrier to start when you've got to buy multiple books to play the game, so I can understand some people being a bit perturbed by that. Also, the cards you have to buy as well to play the game, so you can't just buy the rulebook, you need to buy the cards. Now, if you buy the official minis, I believe the cards come with the actual minis, but if you already had a force like I did, you can buy card packs and you can get the forces you need and their rules. So I really enjoyed this game. I'm eager to play more. I would like to do the whole campaign of the Loire and buy some of the official minis from them, because I think they deserve a bit of support. It's a very small company, this is all they do, and I think it has great potential. As a system, it's quite interesting. It feels like you're playing a board game as a tabletop game, which sounds strange, but you have to play it to believe it. I have started going a bit off-piece and been doing some British troops from the same time period with a bit of what if, Battle of Dorking, invasion scare ideas. What if the British got involved? What if the Prussians tried to invade England, as in the Battle of Dorking story from the 19th century? Again, because it's somewhat different, I'm so used to colonial warfare for the British at this time period, you don't really get to see the grenadiers and their big hats, unless you do the Crimean War, which didn't really interest me too much. I prefer the later 19th century. No rules for this, of course. They haven't done this, but I've based them up for it, and I'll probably do my own homebrew rules and cards for what I think the British should have. It's very difficult to do that, isn't it, without being patriotic and giving them super abilities. So, got to be practical about that. But saying that, most of these forces have very similar stats. You don't have... It's in the doctrine cards where you have the differences. If you get a French unit, the weapon range is longer because of their technology, but the other stats are pretty much the same, if I remember correctly, from the other cards. There's no real difference. So it's in the doctrine cards that come in. So if you have any ideas for any good doctrine national rules for the British, do let me know in the comments, because I could put them into my game if I do it. What do you think a Victorian British army would have as special abilities compared to, say, the Prussians and the French? So that's Eagles of Empire. historical game, lovely game, very bespoke little game, and a very fun game. And I think that's what you want, isn't it? It's fun. It may be based differently to what you're used to for historical games of this time period, but ignore that and just have fun with it. And I certainly did. So thanks for that. I'll see you again in the future. Cheerio.